brought an effusive European approach to gardening that delights her neighbors in Hinsdale, Illinois. The story of the garden and the gardener on A Gardener's Diary.
Trudy Temple has been gardening at her home in Hinsdale, Illinois for almost 40 years, but she's loved growing plants all her life. Her family lived on a farm in Germany where she grew up, and gardening was part of her childhood. In her 20s, she decided to immigrate to the United States. Her late husband, Bill Temple, was an American she met in Germany. Soon after they married, they bought their house in suburban Chicago and raised 2 daughters, Trudy Ann and Margot. Bill loved doing lawn chores, but Trudy's focus was always the garden. Trudy, we're here in Chicago, or the suburbs of Chicago, and we're in summer. We're already into summer, and your garden, we're in the front of your house, and your house has a very European flavor to it.
Yes, it does. That's why we bought it. It reminds me of home.
And where's home?
Home is Germany. Blumenau is the name of the town where I grew up, and that's why we call the house Blumenau. That means flower meadow.
Well, you have lived up to that. This
Right.
is certainly, it does almost have a feeling of a meadow, except you've got this wonderful gate and fence that gives you a sense of structure and encloses the garden.
Right, it encloses the garden. It keeps the deer out.
Tell me about these rocks, because I don't imagine that these were here when you started your garden.
No, they were not. I had them brought in from Wisconsin. I love rocks. They also give you wonderful texture. There are times when I felt I had too many flowers, believe it or not, and so I needed some hardscape, and rocks, I think, was a natural thing for me to use.
And the white, fluffy flowers here that almost look like an astilbe.
Yes.
But it's a much larger plant.
Right.
And you've got it on both sides.
Yes, and repeat. I have it in many places in the garden because I really love it. It is a Polygonum polymorphum, and it is not invasive. I've had this plant here for about 3 years, and yes, indeed it gets larger, but it is not invasive. I love it.
So it gets these summer flowers, and what, does it die back totally to the ground at the end of the season?
Uh-huh.
And the way you train vines up, there's just so much going on.
I love it. I like to play with textures.
Well, you do it very well.
Thank you.
I like that grass. Is that Miscanthus morning light?
Exactly, yes.
It's beautiful, next to the Lythrum.
Yeah.
And that Lythrum is as big as that conifer there, the Chamaecyparis.
Right, yeah. I grew up in Germany in a small town called Blumenau, and everyone that I knew, my parents, aunts, uncles, grandfather, all the villagers, everyone gardened. So therefore, when I ended up with a piece of land, I just had no idea that you actually could own a piece of land and not garden. There was absolutely no garden. And I started gardening because it was what I was used to, right in front of the house. And my new friends and neighbors just loved what I was doing, so I decided to make it bigger. And I've been making it bigger ever since.
You've brought your garden all the way out to the street. You've got it on the inside of the fence and the outside of the fence. And that's not really a very traditional...
No.
I wouldn't think of that as a Midwestern style garden.
Not at all, but this is how I grew up. That's what I knew when I came to America. You see, in Europe, especially in Germany, Austria, Switzerland, people garden in front of the house.
A lot of these herbaceous plants are quite established, and you've got conifers that seem to be a little slower growing. I'm sure that's because of the Zone 5 and the cold winters.
Yes.
A lot of people look at a garden like this and the size of it, and it's pretty large. I don't know how large it is,
it's
but
nearly an acre.
And it's a little overwhelming. But you've been working on it for almost 40 years.
Almost 40 years, and every year I seem to change the palette. I never know exactly what I'm going to do. I just feel it. And I use textures, larger leaves and lighter green and yellowish green.
What is that big leaf there?
That is an Inula helenium.
And it's got the daylily coming up through
Correct.
it. That's a great juxtaposition.
Yes.
And then the spirea here and the
Yes.
coreopsis.
Yes, right.
Beautiful. This is such a welcoming front entrance. You have treated it in a very unusual way in that you've got lots of primarily herbaceous and a lot of tender things, although
Yes.
this clematis must be hardy for you.
Yes, it is. It is. And as you can see, I love growing clematis not on a trellis, rather than just letting them ramble. And through bushes and through daylilies and over the driveway. And
That's a gorgeous color.
yes, it is. And it flowers literally 6 weeks. And then
Wow.
off and on. It is a very fine.
What variety is that?
It's Polish Spirit.
Polish Spirit. And how do you treat it at the end of the season?
I just leave it until spring, and sometimes because it rambles into the driveway, I find little ones that have rooted. And so I wait until late, and then as they sprout, then I cut it way back, and I take the little ones and share them with friends or put them other places.
And what daylily is that?
Quin buck.
Quin buck.
Mm-hmm.
And lots of bright colors, Trudy, in the back here. You have purples. Your window boxes are just wonderful because
Thank
you
you.
combine, you're not afraid to combine houseplants.
No, not at
and
all.
Almost tropical feeling plants like your Agapanthus, which
Yes.
I would never think would grow very well in Chicago.
Yes, it does. It flowers for about 6 weeks. It's
And
good
the
enough for me.
irisine, the
Irisine,
beautiful red.
absolutely one of my favorite plants. I love it. When it is planted so that you can see it through the rising or setting sun, the whole plant looks like it's on fire. I just love it.
A bright yellow grass brightens a shady spot, and Trudy has her own system for improving the soil. One secret to her garden success is something called a Trudy pit when we continue.
Trudy Temple's garden in Hinsdale, Illinois thrives because of good soil. When some visitors from St. Louis learned about her method of creating compost, they came up with a name for it, the Trudy Pits.
A Trudy pit, depending how deep it is, if it's more than 1.5 feet deep, the first thing that goes into it is the day's junk mail. And then all the kitchen scraps, grass clippings, anything that is decomposable. In fact, at one point we had a split rail fence here. I buried the whole split rail fence. I knew sooner or later it would decompose.
We go from a very hot, sunny front to the side area on your house here, and it's very cool and shady and welcoming.
Yes.
And these rocks, these mammoth rocks, really provide a great transition from the
Yes.
gravel to the lawn.
Yes, and I call this the Rotunda Garden because it looks somewhat like a rotunda, and it gives me a description for my ledger. I keep a ledger, and I describe not only the plant, but the location.
And you've got Heuchera.
Right.
You just tuck right in between these rocks. You've got
Right in between, yes. And this is a very special fern. That was born here.
That's a Japanese painted fern.
Japanese painted fern, and it was with a large fern, you know, the regular Japanese painted fern, and on the side I thought it was sick, and I nearly threw it out, and I thought, wait a minute, this could be a sport. So I separated it and grew it for a couple of years, and it stayed small, and then I multiplied it, and I have it in many groupings now.
So it
And it's-
keeps, that's the mature size.
That's the mature size, which is just wonderful, and it's being tested in the lab. It would be called Japanese painted fern, Aterium Geringianum, and that would be called Temple Garden.
Temple Garden, how
Yes.
perfect.
Yes, and one of my favorite plants is this yellow grass.
The Hakanakloa?
Yes, it is always pleasing from early spring until late winter, from spring to spring. That is truly one of the top plants in any garden, and it grows well in sun, shade, moist, dry. It's just a fabulous plant.
And with its arching habit, it's a striking accent
Yes.
here with all the
Yes.
different shades of green.
Yes.
It's the green with the
Yes.
variegated golden
Yes.
color.
Yes. It also comes in green only, but I find this one such a welcome color in the garden. Brightens up every dark spot. It is fabulous, just really fabulous.
And Hakanakloa, I think it's
Macra areola.
And does it hold this color all summer?
All summer, all fall, it's fabulous, absolutely fabulous. I'm always thinking of another spot, where could I put it? And as you can see, I have it in various places in the garden because it is great.
This is an example of a plant that in its straight species form, Sambucus nigra, it's really sort of an ordinary plant. It weeds itself around, the birds throw the fruit seeds around, it comes up everywhere.
Yes.
But the variegated form is really quite elegant.
It is awesome. I love it as a specimen plant. It is a showstopper. It really is. And especially in the white garden, where I try in this area, I have mostly, well, all of it is white. I try for white anyway.
White foliage, white flowers.
foliage, white flowers. And this is truly one of my favorites.
What is the cultivar?
The cultivar is Sambucus alba marginata.
Alba marginata.
Yes.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
This is fun. This is a trick you can play on people.
Yes.
This is a different plant. This is a hibiscus.
That's right, cheating a little bit. And when it flowers, it has these great big white flowers on it.
Ah.
And people come over here and say, wow, what kind
is
of a
that?
shrub is that? They don't realize it's 2 in 1.
It's hard to believe this large water feature is tucked into Trudy's 1-acre garden. And her vegetable garden is definitely not for the birds. Stay with us.
Trudy Temple has a vegetable garden at her home in Hinsdale, Illinois. She has a fence to keep deer out, but she's taken protection of her vegetables to a whole new level.
I cannot imagine a summer without a vegetable garden. And that was a big challenge for me because the animals came just before I wanted to harvest it. The birds would eat the berries, and one day I decided I have to have it all fenced in. Not only fenced in, caged in, atop too. Now, 20 years later, it's still my joy to go out there and I get the raspberries. I get all the wonderful vegetables. And to me, that was worthwhile.
This is quite an elaborate water feature. You have a waterfall and it's terraced down into this larger pond and then a smaller pond here.
Yes, as you can see, waterfall on the top, and then it tumbles over these rocks, and then into a small pool, and then in another small pool, and then over this fall into the large pond.
And you've got goldfish, so how deep is that?
These are all koi, and this large pond here is 4 feet deep, and this one is 5 feet deep. So I enjoy.
I love the plantings, variegated Aurelia.
Yes, that is a great plant. It looks very tropical, but it is perfectly hardy here. In the tropics, it can grow 40 feet tall. It's Aurelia elata, variegata, yes. And it's really a nice one.
What do you call this area adjacent here to your waterfall?
I call this the dance floor.
The dance floor?
The dance floor. That was really quite a joke, I think, because my husband absolutely disliked dancing. And so I thought, if I build a dance floor, then perhaps I might be able to teach him how to dance.
Did that happen?
No, he did not like dancing. So, but I still call it the dance floor.
And it's a great place to display pots.
Yes, a collection of pots. I like that a lot.
This is beautiful.
Yes,
that's a crown of thorns.
Correct. It's called Euphorbia milii.
You've got 3 different cultivars or selections of the crown of thorns, the Euphorbia milii, is that how you pronounce it?
Milii, yes.
Milii here.
And this one here is definitely my favorite. It is so brilliantly red, and it's called Valentine.
For such a thorny plant, it has such a beautiful flower.
Yes, Yes, it is. It's very, very easy to grow, especially out of doors. And inside, also, you put it in the window and you have pleasure all winter long because they do flower throughout the winter.
How long will it be in bloom?
Oh, weeks. Weeks.
You have very creative combinations in your containers throughout your garden.
Yes, it is amazing how many plants one can use in planter boxes or containers like this. And one of my favorites in a planter box and even in the ground is that Begonia Dragonwing.
And that's a tender plant.
It's a tender plant, but you can bring it inside, but it is a little bit on the messy side. And then of course Bacopa, and this asparagus springeri, old-fashioned favorite, but oh, what the texture is so magnificent. You see,
and
this is just a wonderful texture. And then of course here,
Tibicina.
oh,
this is, I think, Brazilian. Which is fun because it's going to have those deep purple flowers later on.
Yes, and there it grows, what, 12, 15 feet tall.
And is that a plectranthus?
It is. It's also wonderful for the boxes. And then the spider plant.
And a fern.
Ferns, yes.
So Begonia Dragonwings, that's a good begonia for, it's actually,
Excellent.
we're in a fair bit of sun here.
Yes.
So it doesn't, it's a begonia that grows well in sun.
Yes, just keep it moist. It's a fabulous plant, and it flowers until frost.
Trudy creates a sense of space by using soaring garden arches, including a new one she designed herself. And a unique planter adds a little old world charm and a lot of color. Stay with us.
Trudy Temple's 1-acre garden in Hinsdale, Illinois seems much larger than it actually is. Trudy designed it so that the plantings, curving paths, and large garden structures create distinct areas that can't be seen all at once. One of the newest structures is a unique arbor that Trudy designed herself. This is quite a majestic arbor or pergola or gateway in your garden. It's actually, it draws my eye up as well as being a support for the vines. It kind of points out all the mature trees in your garden as well.
Right, right. You see, there's only so much land that I have, so I've decided that I need to go vertical a little bit, and this is why I had this, I designed it, and a company from Chicago made it, and I really like it a lot. I felt this was the right size and area that could look perhaps like a rainbow.
It does look like a rainbow.
Yes. And as you can see, I don't like to grow the same plant on each side. So I just have that polygonum growing up this way and over there. I actually have a honeysuckle on the way, but it's going to take a couple more years before it's visible. The garden is designed in a way so you don't see everything at once. You have to go around bends, through pergolas, and explore. And there are many, many benches. I love the idea of having benches. I love the idea of being able to sit down anywhere. Not that I do it a whole lot.
You're too busy pulling weeds.
Yeah, but the idea that I could is good enough, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Trudy, your garden is just full of surprises and color. Everywhere you look, there's something beautiful to look at. We're standing in front of this wagon. This is an old wagon.
This is an old wagon. And in the wagon, on the top of the wagon, there is a box, a cedar box, and filled with wonderful soil, and it's just a catch-all.
Lots of red.
Lots of red. I just absolutely love red.
You use them with abandon.
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
You've got fuchsias.
Right, this is the Gartenmeister Bonstedt.
Gartenmeister Bonstedt. That's a gorgeous fuchsia.
This is a gorgeous, easy to grow.
This garden could be in South Florida instead of Chicago.
Right. This garden has enriched my life tremendously. There is never a time when you're bored. There is never a time when you need to fear growing old, because this is a passion and a wonderful way of life forever, for the rest of your life. So I just highly recommend that wonderful artistry of gardening.